Welcome to another episode of the Reimagined Energy Podcast, the Remix series. In this special edition, we're going through the archives to discuss how community engagement, Indigenous relations, and cleaner energy solutions are shaping the future of renewable energy. Stay tuned as we learn about the future of energy strategies and their impact on the path to net zero emissions.
We're really excited about Oneida. It's going to be one of Canada's largest battery storage system, and it is a partnership. So it's a partnership between the Six Nations of the Grand River Development Corporation, Aecon Concessions, Enerstore, and Northland Power. And the battery supplier is actually Tesla. So Oneida project is going to be 250 megawatts, so 1,000 megawatts per hour energy storage facility. The largest, like I said, in Canada. The system is going to provide a reliable source of capacity and energy balancing services for Ontarians and will contribute to the decarbonization of the province's energy grid. Really excited about this one because it is a part of our larger portfolio of focusing on decarbonization of energy systems. And then the second one you mentioned is the advanced transit system, so specifically the REM in Montreal. So the REM is going to be connecting the airport with multiple stations along the way to downtown Montreal. And just another example of how we are as a company focused on sustainability related projects. So in addition to battery storage, we are focused on transit systems as well to contribute to sustainable transportation options across the country. And REM, so the airport station is actually still being constructed, but there is some stations that are actually very recently opened. So that one should be complete shortly, and it'll provide a sustainable transportation option for people who are flying into Montreal Airport to get to downtown Montreal.
Excellent. You also focus on adopting zero emission equipment, and also piloting new technologies such as low carbon construction materials. So can you give me a couple of examples of how you're doing that?
Yeah, for sure. So that really falls into the second pillar of our sustainability strategy, which is how we build.
Right.
And for the how, we really break down everything that happens on a construction site. So from the equipment that we're using, so that's kind of like your traditional yellow iron equipment, as we would call it. So your excavators, your cranes, your wheel loaders, and then you have your stationary equipment, such as your generators and hand tools, and then the materials that you actually use. So when we look at all of those components, we're really doing an assessment of what alternatives are available and how can we reduce emissions on a construction site. And so when it comes specifically the yellow iron, the construction equipment, we have trialed electric construction equipment. We've had multiple conversations with our suppliers, and really it is working in collaboration with our suppliers to be able to trial these solutions. And so about 2 years ago, we were the first construction company in Canada to trial an electric excavator made by Volvo, and then followed by an electric wheel loader. And the purpose of the trial was really to look at how electric construction equipment integrates into our operations. What are the benefits? What are the challenges? Also an opportunity for our employees from a change management perspective to really start to look at how this technology is going to be incorporated into their day-to-day tasks as well. And then on the material side, we are constantly looking at alternative materials. There's a lot of startup companies in Canada. Actually, Canada is very advanced in this space that are focusing on low carbon concrete. And so we trialed low carbon concrete from a startup company. They were a startup. Now they're grown over the last couple of years, but they're called carbon upcycling. And they've come up with a methodology which reduces emissions with concrete by about 20%. So we were able to trial that at our innovation center. So Aecon has its own innovation center. And we have actually used it in a lot of different applications. We used it for a sidewalk. We also used it for sort of a pathway at the innovation center. So just another example of how we're trying to look at different methods and looking at different construction material options.
How has Schneider Electric Canada encompassed the renewable energy side of things?
Yeah, so if you look at our engagement towards renewable energy, so we've taken a commitment by 2030 to have net zero operation, net zero ready operation by 2030. So what does that mean is that by 2030, we need to have electrified all our operation around the world, and it's pretty much the same reality here in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at it, we have to electrify and minimize the emission on our scope 1 emissions. So what we have done in the past couple of years is we've, like many of our customers, established our own baseline for our scope 1 and scope 2. And for us, our scope 1 emissions would be mainly coming from heating, using natural gas for heating, and some of our industrial processes as well would be having some scope 1 emission. So what we had to do is to look at, hey, from where we are to 2030, what does it mean to reduce our scope 1 emission? What is the strategy? What is our budget to being able to do it? It was an amazing learning journey for all of us. I remember very precisely when I did present to our country president, our CFO, and the leadership team, what does it mean? This journey to become net zero ready. It was quite an eye-opening, a big learning journey. And what I'm super proud is that we're all committed to making it happen. We already have in 2023 5 sites that are net zero ready in Canada. We're working on 7 more. So we've got 24 sites in Canada. So you see, Maria, between where we set to the expectation and where we're getting. So there's still a lot to be done, but we're making things happen, and that's something which is very important for Schneider Electric. Is this ambition to being an impact company? So it's very much an inspiration and a call for action for all of us. So.
Excellent.
So I would say the electrical industry is very much in the very high demand sector overall. We see the electrification, as I talked about myself in my own operation, but as well how the digital economy is increasing the demand for more electricity, resiliency, and so on. So we're still in an industry that has a lot of tailwind and a lot of demand from our customer. We've seen in some of the sectors some of the impact of the inflation because the cost of capital is higher. So for several of our customers, the decision to invest is being putting into a different cycle now. But we're very much confident in this industry. For Schneider Electric, still our priority is to serve our customer, and I'm so impressed by the engagement, the commitment of our employees across the country to best serve our customers. And last week, Maria, we were very proud at Schneider Electric to announce our investment of $140 million to increase our industrial capacity in North America to being able to best serve the demand. So we truly believe that we've got to respond to this increasing demand and lowering down the delivery times and our commitment to deliver. So it's very much telling on Schneider Electric engagement on the North American market, and very proud of that. So it's a lot of things to still to shape and to develop, but we're quite confident in the future.
You have the opportunity to visit other First Nation communities, so you could learn from them, about their renewable energy projects. So which ones stood out the most to you?
Yeah, I mean, we visited many different communities. There's a few that certainly stood out to me. I would say it would be the Middle Lake Tribal Council's biomass facility that they have. I don't know the staff, and they take all the byproducts of big pulp mill right there on site, and they create I believe it's 6 megawatts of renewable energy just from that biomass. And along that last We also went to see Vancouver where they are using some of their sewage to actually heat pump. So they take a couple degrees off the raw sewage there. Have that in for, I think they only have a 3.3 megawatts heat pump line there now, but they are in the midst of installing 2 more of those to increase the capacity to 9.9 megawatts of heating into their grid there in Vancouver. And for me, just seeing these 2 different projects like that, I've seen many solar projects and wind projects. So a solar panel is a solar panel, and not a wind turbine is a wind turbine. But to see these different projects that's really thinking out of the box and taking these products and getting some energy from that, it's really moving for me to see something like that, and it really makes you want to come back and think out of the box on where can you pull energy from that's not your obvious wind and solar, like what ways to me pull some energy out of. There's so many different opportunities in the energy mix for us to create energy, and really hopeful that area and that we're going to develop some energy systems like that to add into our energy mix, because it's really going to take all different energies to really make this energy transition successful. There's a lot of the renewable energy systems are really reliant on the sun or reliant on the wind to be able to operate. But waste products are pretty constant. With the way that our capitalist society operates, they're always going to be popping. So if there's anything that we can do to capture some of that energy that was going to be lost in the list, then that's something that really inspires me to keep moving forward. And I would say along with that, we went to some different presentations, and obviously for me, maybe some of the projects where it's really didn't stand out to me as much that what did stand out to me was see some of these small community-based projects like this, even a community that was involved and how much culture was involved with all these different projects that were across these First Nations, having different naming ceremonies and really cultural ceremonies during all these projects, and seeing the community come together with community engagement and having their second clue on that was really something that blew me away. There's like you said, for First Nation projects in Canada, I just have different they are compared to your average renewable energy project. So it was really, really amazing to see that, and really inspired me to come back to my community, ensure that I'm getting as much culture wrapped up in my projects as possible. And on the last note for that, I'll say something else that did blow me away was just the amount of struggles that women and Indigenous communities have in this energy transition. A lot of them are running diesel generators like year-round. Some of them are using upwards 60 million years diesel per year. Just to heat their communities and have a little bit of power, and we have to cycle brownouts for different people in that power during this time because they would almost only need so much diesel, and especially whenever there's a storm or something that stops the garbage from getting up to the community. It just really puts into perspective they say how hard this energy transition is, but some people have it harder in that transition. And even when it comes down to things like language, a lot of those small communities up north, they all are English speakers, and they really don't even have any words for some of these renewable energy systems. So just for them to educate their community, they have to get translations, they have to make up new words to be able to get their community to even understand what this is, on top of the struggles of having to manage all these renewable energy systems up there and having the capacity to operate that. So I really learned a lot as part of that program this summer, and I'm really excited to continue my work with the Indigenous Energy Organization as a mentor going forward.
Absolutely. The First Nations people are stewards of this land. And, how does, in your opinion, the energy transition fit into this statement?
But the energy transition really, it 100% falls into that. We got stewards of this land. We're trying to protect land, and I mean, the renewable energy as a whole and climate change really is the world pollutants to be able to protect this land. So I really feel like, the rest of the world is starting to think like the First Nations, like we're stewards of this land and have them now also want to be stewards of this land and not to do what they can to protect this earth because they're really seeing the detrimental effects that SRE has on this land. And, I feel that us as Indigenous communities can really we had a lot of knowledge just that's built into our culture and a lot of takeaways that the Western world can really take from that. So I really feel that we are going to be at the forefront of this, and as stewards of this land, it's really, really super important for us to do all that we can. And I really believe that we're very well positioned as we move forward in this transition. And I don't ever the sad piece for a lot of the work that's being done in this country.
Bioburn Pros, we're a biomass processing company, more on the wood and vegetative waste side of things. And what we do is we employ air curtain burner technology. And the technology itself, it reduces emissions, it reduces smoke being released in the atmosphere by way of the air curtain burner. And what it is, basically, it's high pressure air. It's being forced into the fire, which allows it to burn at extremely high temperatures, up to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, providing almost a complete combustion of the material. We do a 99% reduction of feedstock to residual char and ash. So it's a very clean process. And based on the high pressure air that's being blown through the manifold, it recaptures all the smoke and particulate and it reburns. So it's very clean burning.
How long? Like I know, how long does it take to burn? Like how long does it, if you have, I guess, give me an example of how long it would take for things to burn down, I guess.
Yeah, so one comparison we use for the technology is basically what you could burn in an open pit in a day is what we burn per hour. So anywhere from 7 to 9 tons an hour is what we're burning in our burn chamber. So it's quite a bit. We're doing anywhere 70 to 90 tons. If you got a really dry feedstock or some very brushy, quick burning materials, we can even see those average numbers go up quite a bit.
That's right. So the carbon neutral effect that's taking place, the residual is heat, right? And I guess that's called bioenergy. So what I'm learning, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So during the burn process, with the high temperatures, basically we have a secondary system that can marry into the burn chamber. And what it does, it has a hood vent that will kind of regulate how much heat it's taking from the fire. And through that, it runs it through a cooling and heating system that turns a turbine, and it can generate up to 300 kilowatts of energy per hour. And once we get into that side of things, the system itself will consume about 50 kilowatts of that per hour. So you're doing about 250 kilowatts an hour of power generation. And we're able to store that into battery banks, which we call the battery charger, or the biocharger.
Well, that leads up to what I was just going to ask next is, there's a new concept that you're working on, and it's just about that. It's about stored energy because there's a lot being created during this process.
Right.
So you come up with this idea, which is really kind of cool. It's a new concept, right?
Right. And I can't say I personally came up with the idea. We work exclusively with a company called Air Burners, and they're the patented manufacturer of the technology. And we've got the exclusive rights for Atlantic Canada for this technology. And by all means, there's conversations going on. But what they've developed here with this biocharger is an ability for us to now electrify forestry equipment or rural sites that are away from a power grid that traditionally rely heavily on diesel generators. And even with the forestry setting, you need to truck in your fuels to run your excavators or your forwarders and harvesters and all your equipment. With the biocharger, we can store 750 kilowatts of energy per 750,000 kilowatt hours of energy, And that allows us to then overnight, when you're not using the equipment, you can then plug it in and charge the equipment, cell phones, anything electrified on site. And with the rural settings where they're so heavily dependent on fossil fuels and diesel for their
Right.
generators to run their lights at night,
Mhm.
it could be a mining setting, it could be just a rural community. It then allows them to basically charge some batteries up, and they can run at night off these battery banks.
Hurricane Fiona was devastating to this area. And I know that you were, Bioburn fuels was really helpful in a way of removing a lot of the waste, right?
That's right. Yeah. So with Fiona, so far, most of our projects have been storm debris remediation. A lot of local landfills are holding this material, and they're not typically supposed to under normal regulations, but under emergency settings, they get authorization to store it at these facilities. So a lot of what we've done to date has been repatriating landfills so that they can extend the life cycle of landfill. They don't need open new cells, waste cells. And so, Hurricane Fiona was really the birth of this business. We have a excavation and groundwork background before we had started Bioburn Pros. And we were just, Fiona hit and it, knocked trees down all over the province in Atlantic Canada. And we were getting hired to go clean this up and truck the stuff to local dumping stations. And then we had seen the municipalities were then taking the burden of trucking this stuff elsewhere. So,
which adds to, there's a lot of carbon, there's a lot of everything being added there. Yeah.
right. And we can show up at these locations and eliminate all the tub grinders, which are heavy emitting equipment. We can eliminate the mass amounts of equipment just to load the trucks, and thousands of trucks can be eliminated from the roads, which in turn saves a bit of the local infrastructure and roadways, less wear and tear. So we can really localize the waste processing and go site to site and just clean up that way.
And I love the idea of how burning the low grade wood, I guess it's important to point out that it's stumps. It's not precious, cedar or oak, it's really the lower grade stuff. But I love how it can repatriate the soil.
That's right. Yeah. So we didn't want to, obviously prime lumbers, there's so much great use for that, from stud lumber for building homes to, multiple uses. Even firewood for heating homes. But with where we found a great niche was in that low grade stuff, like you mentioned. And typically, when it came to stumps, a lot of them are old growth stumps. They're pretty big. They don't fit in the grinders or the chippers. And we're able to process those in our burners. Our main industrial burner is the S223 air curtain burner. And it's got a 22 foot by 8 foot by 8 foot burn chamber. So you can fit a whole log in there if it is a low grade log, but a whole bunch of waste in there. And at the end of the burn phase, you're left with biochar or biocoal, depending on how far into the burn you get with it. But we're able to take that soil and then that biochar and repatriate the soil on site. So that allows us to sequester the carbon, put it right back into the ground immediately.
That's a wrap on today's remixed episode, where we explored cutting-edge low-carbon practices. As we continue to transition towards renewable energy, it's clear that collaboration, innovation, and local solutions will play a huge role in achieving sustainability. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the voices and visions that are reshaping our energy future. Until then, stay inspired and keep reimagining the possibilities. I'm your host, Maria McGowan.